good morning, and good morning, and welcome to this month's episode of good, welcome to this month's episode of Reframing the Image of Relationships. We're your hosts for this conversation. My name is Dwayne Dwyer, I go by the Mindset Coach, and I am joined by these two ladies right here on my right, your left. I am joined by Miss Onita V, and on her left, right on her right. I'm sorry, your left. I am. We are also joined by Miss Lisa Keys, who is always growing. Ladies, how are you doing on this beautiful Saturday morning?
Fabulous.
Doing well.
Yeah, yeah.
How
Great.
about you?
I'm awesome. I'm awesome. I got to tell on myself. I jumped just now because I got my headphones on, but then I still heard you through my outward speakers. So I had to go in the settings just now and change that. So I'm good. I'm good. All is well. Um, So again, as everyone who are joining us, again, we like to acknowledge you by name. So those of you who have joined us in the chats, Michelle Ray, Cassandra McKenzie, Crystal Everett, Miss Verly McCoy, good to see you and welcome to today's conversation. If this is your first time joining us, listen, go ahead and put your cursor in the lower right hand corner of your screen. Find the YouTube icon if you've joined us on YouTube, and go ahead and click the fly out and then subscribe. Don't forget to find the notification bell, click the drop down, and select all. That way, you know every time we go live on this platform. Now, that being said, I want to make sure that I go through real quick just our admin notes before we get started. So, again, this is the last week of our monthly giveaway. So, that being said, make sure that you become eligible. And you can do that by going to www.totalmindsetshift.com. I say again, www.totalmindsetshift.com, and then just register as a member of the site. Once you register as a member of the site, you'll get access to the community. On the community board, just go to the general message board, the first pinned message to the top. Open that up. You will see a button in there, say December. Click on December, and then ask your question for next Friday night's conversation. If we ask your question during the show, then you will be actually put in our drawing, and you will receive a gift, a free gift that we give away. So again, go to www.totalmindsetshift.com and register to become a member of the site. I have to say this. I cannot give anybody any recognition for something that they asked for a show that's already happened. So I want to make sure I say that the cutoff is next Friday before I hit the live button. Once I hit live, there's nothing I can do for you. Whew. Now, here we go. Welcome to the Crossroads of Commitment, a thought provoking exploration at the intersection of adultery and idolatry. In this conversation, we're going deep into the complexities and challenges posed by these two significant issues. We'll be looking at them from various lenses to understand their impact on individuals, relationships, and society as a whole. Our journey will take us through the historical context of both adultery and idolatry, their evolution over time, and how they are perceived in modern times. We may hear the personal story from those directly affected, offering unique insights and perspectives. Additionally, we'll explore the spiritual dimensions of these topics, examining how faith and belief systems address and interpret them. This is more than just a discussion. It's an opportunity for learning, understanding, and personal growth. Whether you're seeking guidance, answers, or simply to satisfy your curiosity, we hope to provide a comprehensive and respectful exploration of these sensitive topics. That said, we invite you to join our exclusive Diamond Club. It's packed with invaluable resources, webinars, and enriching content. You can also become a part of the community as previously addressed, where individuals come together and share their journeys, offer support, and uplift one another. That said, let's embark on this journey together, keeping an open mind and heart as we navigate these crossroads. Now, I want to give you guys a background because today we're doing a scenario as we always do, right? Well, not always, but this is what we're doing today. And the scenario is choices at the crossroads. Now, James, a 40-year-old IT manager, and Lisa, not Lisa on the screen, just Lisa, right? Lisa, a 38-year-old high school teacher, have two children ages 12 and 10. Their marriage has always been strong, but recent events have brought unexpected challenges. Lisa recently discovered that James had been secretly investing a significant portion of their saving into a risky stock market venture without her knowledge. The twist is that his financial manager is a young 28-year-old woman that appears to be very flirtatious. This revelation has shaken Lisa's trust in James, not just financially, but in their relationship as a whole. Simultaneously, James has been feeling increasingly disconnected from Lisa, feeling that she prioritizes her career and social activism over their relationship and family. She works closely with a young man who's very successful and influential. It appears that Lisa hangs her hat on every word this young man says, often quoting this young man during their discussion. Now, as you've kind of figured out, James and Lisa are now at a crossroad, facing issues of broken trust, misaligned priorities, and the challenge of navigating their relationship in the face of these revelations. Their views of opposite sex interaction, financial security, personal ambitions, and what constitute commitment in marriage have brought them to a point where they must deeply examine their relationship and individual actions. I'm just shaking my head already before we get started. So, that being said, I want to make sure that we dive into this because first we're going to define adultery and idolatry. And before I kind of throw it at you, I'm going to give you guys a minute to just kind of process this as I continue to address people. So, Bernadette Simmons, good to see you. And Gillino Trini Peach, good to see you over on Instagram as well. And again, welcome to today's conversation. Before we get started, listen, you guys need to share this, right? Share this with people that you know and some people that who may be dealing with this, trying to overcome certain situations that they may have dealt with in the past and still struggling with it. So, going back to these young ladies, I would like for you, if you don't mind, compare and contrast adultery and idolatry. And when we say compare and contrast, again, we got to define them first and then kind of compare them to one another, how they're like and how they're different. So, that being said, whoever wants to go first, the floor is yours.
Well, the way Lisa is looking, I guess it's me. Good morning, everybody. So I'm gonna start with adultery first, and it's when a married person has sexual intercourse with a person not their spouse. And idolatry is extreme admiration or reverence towards something or a person. Now, in this situation, um, the the comparison is, to me, you can idolize something so much that then you cross over and then you commit adultery. And I have not me doing that, but experienced that where something is so, like James, he is really going after this young lady, trying to get her attention by wasting the family's money. What's the next step? So I would say spiritually, we can commit adultery towards God when we start to idolize and give more admiration and reverence to things and people.
Now, I take notes, so I got to read read my notes because I had to make sure that I got a complete understanding of it because, like you said, this is a complex topic, and we often misunderstand what idolatry and adultery mean and how they intersect. Um, Adultery refers to an act of a married person engaging in sexual relationship with someone other than their spouse, and is considered a violation of the covenant agreement. And idolatry, the practice of giving reverence to anything other than the one true God. Anything other than the one true God. Idolatry is explicitly condemned in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Um, it's a it's a form of spiritual unfaithfulness and a violation of the command to worship and serve God alone. Is the definition that I an explanation of what I came up with. And you're asking how they intersect, right? That's the question. Okay.
Well, yeah, just kind of compare them, and then what are their likenesses and what are their differences?
Well, the likenesses is that there are so many references to adultery that the children of the Israelites committed against God, and he likened it to adultery, going outside of the covenant relationship that they had.
Okay. No, no. Y'all know me. Um, I like your depictions of it. And I think for the most part, we need to clearly understand some things before it becomes crystal clear. Lisa, I like the fact that you brought into the conversation the idea, the concept of covenant, because we need to really understand what a covenant is. And unfortunately, a lot of times what we do is we get into a relationship with my perspective of what the covenant relationship is, like my idea of marriage. So we have in our mind what marriage is, and therefore it's your responsibility to fit my mental image of marriage. And when you don't fit my mental image of marriage, now we're getting to the point to where I'm disappointed, I'm upset, my feelings hurt, all of this other great stuff. But I have literally set a condition that you're not responsible for achieving. It's not my responsibility to achieve your perspective of relationship. So that's the first thing that we need to understand. A covenant, even when we come together in marriage, I am making a covenant with the Most High. That's who the covenant is with, right? Ideally, when we go back and understand the covenant, I am not capable of fulfilling the covenant. I'm just not. It is what it is. In fact, if we really understand the covenant, when I break the covenant, I'm supposed to die. And so because if I'm just putting it out there, I'm being honest. So because that's the case, the significance of Christ, he jumps in and he says, "Hey, I am going to be the one that dies for them." So now it changes the whole concept of it. So what we have done, we have watered down the notion of covenant, right? We've watered it down to the point to it's simply just what I believe. So if you don't do what I think you should be doing, then you're wrong, you're a demon, you know what I'm saying, whatever. And so now that's the problem. So understanding the covenant first, and I gave a very basic description of it, that very basic. Um, but in the Diamond Club, you guys know we've gone into detail in it. So, given the understanding of the covenant, I've made a covenant with the Most High. My spouse is now the recipient of my obedience to the covenant. That's really what it is. So now, moving forward, when it comes down to adultery, right? Because we believe, and I'm just gonna call a spade. We honestly believe that adultery surrounds sex. That's it. If it has nothing to do with sex, in our mind, it's not adultery. Well, that's not what the scriptures say. When you go back into the Old Testament, it is the way that the Israelites go in and out of relationship with the Most High. They will abandon Him and go and hang out with this culture and adopt their ways and start worshiping their gods and start doing so forth and so on. And then when they get in trouble, they say, "Oh God, we need you, we love you, we miss you, right? Can you help us?" That in turn is really what adultery is, right? The idolatry piece is the worship inside, right? So when you worship, when you and I like to simplify it because it really makes sense. Anything that you give more attention to than you give the Most High, that in turn becomes adultery. So now, and I got it. I'm not the most favorite person doing these conversations, right? So now that looks like children, that looks like friends, that looks like TV, that looks like my job, that looks like anything that I hold in high regard. And then I have the audacity to tie my name to it. So if I ask you, say, tell me a little about yourself. First thing out your mouth is, "Oh, I am a doctor at blah, 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 blah." Or I am, no, that's not who you are, right? If you are a believer, you are first a believer. You are first a follower. You are first you see what I'm saying? And so now it's just little things. Even when the conversation piece exists, the things that we articulate out in the space, the way that we move, the way that we behave, the way that we vacillate between words and deeds, right? When we look at it from that perspective, that changes everything. Because now it's not just a watered down version of adultery that says, "Oh, well, these people, they do it all the time, and these people are completely innocent because they don't do it wrong." It goes all the way back to the behavior that exists within the home. Do you vacillate in and out of that covenant agreement that you've made with the Most High in the home, right? Because most times we like to talk about what the person does outside the home: sex, adultery, too easy, right? But it's simple, it's easy. That's down here. But how does he view it? Well, it's the way that it's the covenant agreement that we made in our ability to move in and out of it. Where they overlap is that sometimes they look the same. A lot of times when you go commit adultery, that reveals to you what you idolize. But that's a whole nother conversation. Um, let me let me kind of jump in these chats, and I'm looking at y'all got to bear with me, right? Because I'm looking at YouTube, I'm looking at Facebook, I'm looking at all kind of other stuff, and I'm looking at Instagram at the same time. So I want to make sure I'm entertaining both questions and statements on both sides, and addressing people that has shown up as well. So Michelle gave a couple of different scriptures here. She got Luke 18:20. She got Exodus 20:14, and she has First Corinthians 10:7. Um, and Roland, poor man's Dr. Phil, good to see you, brother. He says, sharing anything with another that is meant for the one that you have a covenant with. Absolutely. Um, yeah, man, like you said, y'all hit that like button and share it as well. So again, I think we're off to a great start. And again, I am open to different perspectives as well. I don't want anybody just to say, okay, well, if he said it, it's right. No, that's not what we do here. Like if you view it a different way, by all means, share that. Okay, so now, since we done talked about a little, right? Talked a little about the adultery and idolatry. I like to say it that way. Let's kind of go to our next question, because we were talking about James and Lisa to begin with. So, how does James and Lisa's respective actions challenge or align with a shared definition of fidelity and commitment in marriage? Lisa, I think Anita saying she went first the last time. See how she eyeballing you?
No, okay. So you said, how does James and Lisa's respective actions challenge or align with the shared definition of fidelity? Well, both of them, as you stated, are focusing outside of their um, covenant agreement. I would think at this point, if they haven't come together and had discussions, they both have an issue with maybe the young man that she's working with and the young lady that he's working with. And if they don't come together and talk about it and realign themselves, then they're going to make the situation much worse than it has to be. Because now both of them, not one of them, both of them are outside of their covenant agreement. Both of them are acting um, for the benefit of themselves, and they're not filtering it, or they're not taking it to the Father to have a discussion about it and coming together. And if she knows that he has someone younger that he's working with, and she may be flirtatious, and he knows that she's working with someone who's young, and she's talking about him all the time, and it's causing a rift in their relationship, then at some point communication has to happen. So why are we not talking about this? Why are we allowing this wedge to come in between our relationship and focusing on the things that are outside? Because you know why? Because you don't want to have a conversation. You don't want to sit down and have a hard conversation and deal with the issues, because both of y'all wrong. Okay, I'm sorry.
Tell us how you really feel.
Right? So just based on what we already know about James and Lisa, what they've been doing, they've put too much emphasis and attention on their goals, their career, things outside of the home, and they've allowed their flesh to rise up instead of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, to correct. So until they can get back in line to what God has said, what covenant is, what adultery is, because to me, they're already committing adultery based on the thought. Because if you already know, oh, you got to bring this man up during dinner, or, well, Rob, he always does it this way. What are your true thoughts about Rob? The same thing about James investing money that belongs to the family. Now, that's a problem. Why are you not talking to Lisa about where the money goes? Is it because you're trying to impress this flirtatious young lady? What thoughts do you have? So you've already committed adultery with the thought of it. So the fidelity part, there, where is it? There isn't any. So until they both can sit down, have a conversation, and get through this friction point, it's possible that they will end up in divorce.
Yeah, I get that. Um, and I think you're right. Like both of them are in error. I think that's a clear and obvious statement here. Um, I'm sure someone may feel that um, James is in more error, which I don't understand why, the idea of more or less is even in question. Either it is or it ain't. That's just what it's all about. So James, investment, even if the young lady wasn't flirtatious, even if it was a dude that was his financial manager, just by virtue of him even doing that without having a conversation with her is just wrong. I think most of us understand that. Now, there are some people who don't believe that. Some people believe that, look, if I made the money, I should be able to invest it as I see. Now, I'm not telling those people how to handle their relationship because in most cases, those people probably are not believers. And if they're not believers, I'm okay with that. Do as you believe, let it be unto you. But if you're a believer and you believe in a covenant and you believe in having a healthy relationship, then having this conversation with your spouse should be the right action to take. And um, there's some other things that may exist as well. Like, why didn't he have that conversation? Did he not have that conversation? Is because of some past conversations he had with her, some past investments he wanted to make, and she probably wasn't, in agreement with it. Never gave a reason why. It's just that she don't feel like that's the right thing to do. Not saying that's right, not saying it's wrong, but there is a reason behind it. On the other hand, when you look at her actions, I guess for starters, right? For starters, I think and I'm not saying that we should not pursue certain things, but those certain things should never take precedent over our family. So, whatever a person wants to be out in space, fulfilling their calling or whatever that looks like, right? How does it feed into the overall perspective of what the family value is, what the family goals are? If we have those, right? So that may bring into another conversation that needed to break. There are several layers of discussions that they probably need to have so that they can get a full understanding of what's going on. But for me, I'm just going the straw for me, the straw that broke the camel's back is her quoting him in the midst of discussions that we have. Let me tell you something. If you really want to get under a man's skin, come up in my house telling me what your daddy say. Come up in the house telling me what the pastor say. Come up in my house telling me what, Uncle Elroy say. We're gonna have some issues. I'm just telling you the truth. And I think I'm not saying I'm speaking for all men, but I believe most men think that way and feel that way. Because at the end of the day, you know, you don't I don't necessarily want to hear what another man is quoting unless it is in direct reflection of the Bible, and then you're quoting the Bible, not necessarily that man, right? But you come up in here talking about, oh, well, Bruce Leroy said this. No, I ain't got time for Bruce Leroy. In fact, I tell you what, go and get your overnight bag and you and go on Bruce Leroy, go hang out. So I think when we look at that, there are several things that we can identify to where that it says that their actions challenge what a healthy relationship look like in alignment with shared definition of fidelity and commitment. Like, what is your commitment level? Who are you committed to? Are you committed to yourself or are you committed to a relationship? And I think that becomes the issue because most people, yeah, I did say Bruce Leroy, most people don't understand that, right? They don't understand their level of commitment. They're committed to their image of relationship and not what relationship is actually supposed to be. So that's just my take on it. I apologize if I was a little strong, long winded, but don't come to my house talking about your uncle or your daddy or your pastor. Just saying. Um, I'm sorry. Did you did you guys want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to add to it the the importance and significance of adultery, especially as it's described in the Old Testament, where it says that if a man, I don't want to misquote it, um, but it says there was a serious, there's a serious consequence for adultery in the Old Testament. It talks about a man and a woman committing adultery, and that both of them would be, like you said, put to death, as you said earlier. That's in Leviticus 20 and 10. And also, Jesus talked about adultery and saying, if, even as Anita mentioned earlier, that even if you look upon a woman, it's considered, adultery. And so, the things that we look at, the things that we desire, the things that we take in, um, that that we are I would say sometimes unknowingly, but I think today we should have an understanding of what adultery is and what idolatry is. But I think sometimes when we don't know that we are unknowingly committing these sins, and I think this is a great opportunity for this platform for us to talk about it, because there are so many misunderstandings or about this very topic. I mean, I have so many notes, but I also want to say this, that because adultery throughout the Bible is sometimes symbolic, um, pertain, when it pertains to idolatry, and they both intersect. I think that it's so good that we're taking the time to understand what both definition means, and understand that they both can merge together at sometimes. Sometimes.
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. And I also want to add to what she is saying. If there are any questions, by all means, don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat. Whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you're on even on Twitter or Instagram, like put your questions in the chat. You guys know I derail a whole conversation to make sure that we answer the questions that are being asked. Um, and just to kind of bring my brother quote to the stage here, poor man Dr. Phil said, both of them wrong. That's it. Bottom line up front. Both of y'all wrong for putting your trust in yourself. I think that's one of the most profound things that we need to understand, and one of the hardest things to unpack. That my idea of relationship may be the reason why I don't have continued relationship, because I have this fairy tale in my head and I'm asking you to be the star. But remember, you come second fiddle to me. That's a lot of what relationships look like. And the only thing you got to do is take a step back. Take a step back, pay attention. Look at TVs, look at commercials, look at movies, right? What you'll see is idolatry in full motion. That's what's really happening. I'm not gonna touch that one right now. Not right now. Maybe later. Okay. Michelle said, I believe they both need to understand that the meaning of the actions first in order to understand how to handle the conversation. Yeah, I agree. I think for the most part, what we do as people collectively, we want to defend our action instead of listening to another person's perception of our action. And a lot of times, what you hear is they'll say something along the lines, "Well, that was not my intent. I did not intend, to do that." And depending upon who you're talking to, you might hear something along the lines of, "I don't care. I don't care what you intended to do, because what your intentions were doesn't matter once impact happens." And so, unfortunately, you're having two separate conversations. This person over here is talking about impact. This person over here is talking about intent. And unfortunately, it never seems to merge into this thing we call understanding. And since we do not have understanding in the midst of the conversation, we never grow to the place to, not first and foremost, repenting for what we did, and then finding the perfect way to move forward. So I thank you for sharing that as well. Okay, moving on to the next question here. Um, does Lisa's dedication to her career in activism, perceived by James as neglect, equate to a form of adultery or idolatry? And please share your interpretation as you explain it.
Well, um, if she's putting her career in activism before her relationship with James, then I would say yes, because her attention has moved away from the relationship. Her, like you were saying, it may not have been intended, but that is what he received. So it could be, this is why he's seeking this attention from this younger lady by investing more. Um, but however, it could be something more on James' part, where he may feel left out because she is so successful, that he's seeing it emotionally as neglect when maybe competition. He may be feeling like there's a competition, that he's not doing as well as she's doing. And then may start looking outside the marriage. So his emotional neglect could come from her actually being more successful, or him feeling emotional neglect, maybe her being more successful. Doesn't mean that it's true, but this is his perception. Hopefully that makes sense. Um, in my head, it makes sense. Hopefully, I'm relaying that in my words.
No, no, it makes sense. And I kind of want to, I want to ask a question based upon what you said, because correct me if I'm wrong. You identified both sides. You identified the action, right? But then you identified that there may be another underlying reason why this is the case. So, in your opinion, which is more important to discuss? Is it more important to discuss the action or the possible reason why he feels the way he feels?
That's a good question.
Sorry.
I can't say that one is more important than the other because there's something on both sides that needs to be dealt with. So I can't put more importance on her putting more emphasis on her career and leaving out his underlying or possible underlying um, issues or unresolved things that happened in the past. So I can't, to me, both people have to take responsibility and say, yes, this is what's going on. This is what I have to deal with before the two can come back centered.
Okay, okay, I can see that. I think the challenge with that um, is that if, and I'm playing advocate. I don't want to use the other word, right? I'm just playing advocate here. I think the challenge with that is the way that is actually used and projected is that because there might be some underlying issue that you have that views what I'm doing as wrong, then there's nothing I need to do to correct my wrong. You need to correct how the underlying issue and how you feel about what it is I'm doing. And I think that's the way it's projected in society for the most part. Therefore, there's no accountability metric for me. And because I've created the story in my mind that how you feel is not accurate. How you feel is based upon something before that you never dealt with. Therefore, the feeling has presented itself. Then you need to fix you. I'm good. Right. I think that is grossly wrong. I think, and this is my notion. I think we deal with problems in real time, right? So if you, I don't know, I'm just going to make this up as we go along. If you, for whatever reason, got mad at something and you threw an iron and broke a TV, we fixing to talk about you throwing this iron and breaking my TV. That's what we about to talk about. I don't really care about anything before that. We're going to talk about what took place with this iron and this TV first. Once we iron that out, no pun intended, once we iron that out, then we can talk about, this stuff over here. But I think that we must collectively address problems in real time and then work chronologically so that we can get better. And here's the other side to it. Relationships, I believe, is the gateway of growth, right? So in the span of relationship, I have a accountability partner right here, right here. I ain't got to go out there and search. My accountability partner is right here. Their job, part of what they're accepting to do, is that they're going to hold me accountable to the covenant that I made with the Most High. So they have a responsibility to tell me what they observe in my behavior. At least I apologize if I'm stealing your thunder, right? They have a responsibility to tell me what they identify in my behavior. So the minute that I say, "Oh well, that ain't true," that's how you see things, I'm in error in more than one way. So I believe that's just me. That's just how I believe it is. And there's a couple of different references behind me to state that as well. Um, is there anything else you want to add to that before we move on to Lisa? Or
I like how you broke it down where you use the iron because that's you acting out. Where is that coming from? So until we address it, then me working hard, that's not my fault that you don't think that you're getting emotional needs met or your emotional needs met. So I like how you broke it down. And you made it clear. We're not saying just because she is working hard that that's an excuse for him. We're saying, hey, why are you feeling this way? It has nothing to do with her working hard. So
Lisa always growing. You muted.
Can you put the question back up for me again? I'm sorry. Can you hear? Okay. Um, does Lisa's dedication to her career and activism? Okay, let me stop right there. I can't even go past that. Does Lisa dedication to her career and act? I think we all should be um, do our best in anything that we do, but our dedication should always be to the relationship. That's what our dedication should be to, because as you said earlier, Coach, the covenant agreement that we made and we entered into. Let me say this first: every good gift comes from above. So our relationships, our mates, our children, whatever God blesses us with, those gifts that He gives us are from above, from Him. Every good gift. So we can't begin to worship our jobs, our careers. We can't worship our jobs and our children and our spouse, because those are the gifts. So how can you go and worship the gift that the Creator gave us and not worship the Creator? So those are things, and I'm just learning this, later in my life. But I understand that you cannot, and I hope I don't feel like I hope I don't sound like I'm too biblical, but I'm just being honest, because that's how I have to filter everything through. So the dedication that we have, you should be, you should commit time to your career. But sometimes, as we see in our society today, we worship that, we honor that degree, that job, that career, and we shouldn't, because that's not the most important thing. Anything that we have can be taken away from us in a moment. But God is always going to be there. He's always the same. Um, and James James perceives it as neglect. Well, I think there's a conversation we need to have now. If he's perceiving this as neglect, there's no sense to continue to think on this. If that's your perception, let's sit down and let's deal with it right now. Let's have a conversation. We don't want to let it fester and grow into something that it didn't have to. So if that's his perception, James is the head of the household. I'm sorry, that's the order of God. And if he is the head of the household, not saying that he is no one he's rules over anyone. I'm just saying that's just the order of God, because we all work together. And that's the benefit of being in the covenant relationship, that we all work together. We can come together for the greater good, not just for our own good. I hope that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. I like the fact that you stop at the dedication piece, because honestly, I was going to mention it later. But no, you're good, because I think that's where we have to understand, like, what are you dedicated to? um, my job only exists for a particular reason. It's not over my family, it's to support my family. That's it. But if your job is to support your family, why does your job get all of your attention? Right? It doesn't make sense. I know that there are some people who work during the day and then come home and work at night. Well, if you work during the day and you come home and work at night, then what do you have to give to your family? What do you have to give to the one that you are in agreement with, right? The one who that you have, you share have these shared living quarters with. Like, what do you have to give that person if your dedication is to your job? And I like the fact that you went down to, the perception of James, because that kind of goes back to what me and Anita was just talking about, right? It's important, if my partner perceive a thing, it's important for us to discuss it, because first and foremost, it is important for us to analyze the information in real time. If you perceive it, then there is a version of fact to support it, hopefully. But don't just tell me that you feel that if there is no evidence to support what you feel. And too many times, what we have been caught up in, we've been caught up into this fictitious notion that said all you have to do is use the word feel, and no one can question how you feel. That's not a true statement. No one is subject to how you feel either. No one. Let me say it again. No one. Parents, pay attention. No one, right, Just because little Jimmy does not feel that he should go to bed at 9 o'clock does not mean that little Jimmy should not get his behind in the bed at 9 o'clock. I don't care how you feel. Get in the bed because I said so. That's it. Well, gentle parenting, sure, that's a thing over there. So I say that because it's important for us to understand the word feel does not supersede reality, the facts, the information, what is being observed in real time, which leads to discernment. We should be able to discern what's more in line with the will of God by being able to analyze the facts in real time. But some of us cannot analyze those facts in real time because we are superimposed, right? We superimpose our feelings into the atmosphere, into the environment. And now, because sorry, y'all ain't gonna like me after I say this, because society has taught me to tell everybody that I'm an emotional creature, and you believe I'm an emotional creature. Only thing I got to do is lean on my emotions, and you believe that that's who I am. That's a lie. Stop it. Everybody's emotional creatures. Everybody has emotions. So we need to come out of the delusion that was created for us that's tearing relationships apart. There are people who really are struggling. Loneliness is your problem, not mine. If you're lonely, get in agreement with God. Spend more time with Him so He can rid you of that feeling. So again, I'm sorry. I tend to go on tangents every now and then. Um, let me see. Looks like Michelle comment. She said, "I'm sorry, Lisa. I didn't get one answer. One question I missed. Do you believe? Bring the question back up again. Adultery or idolatry? Which one would you go with? Bring the question back up again, please. The question. There we go. All right. Which one were you going with? Adultery or idolatry?
For James and Lisa,
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit of both there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's a little bit of both as well, and that's why I want us to understand how they're interlaced. Okay, thank you for that. So let's kind of move on to the psychological motivations behind it, right? So under the psychological motivations, what possible underlying fears or insecurities might have driven James to make a secret financial investment? That's part one, and Lisa to immerse herself in her career and extra activities. This ought to be good.
I like how Lisa's like, no, tell me more.
It's listen, it's the lean for me. You know what I'm saying? Let me
Right.
lean
Well,
away
go
from my
ahead. You
microphone
got
because
it.
I want you
Right.
to
You
understand I
got
ain't
it.
about to say nothing.
So, what possible underlying fears or insecurities might have driven James? I wrote, first, James may believe Lisa may leave him, so he's setting himself up in the event that this happens, thinking that, you know what, I think she's doing something else. I need to set myself up. I'm going to make some investments, so when this happens, I'm not just left out here with nothing. And then I put he may not trust Lisa anymore and believes she may be having an affair with, what did you say, Bruce Leroy? She may be having an affair with him. So in reality, is she? We don't know. But his perception, she's always bringing him up. Like Lisa said, he's the head of household. And like the coach said, I don't want to hear about another man. So here it is. He's the head of the household, and you bringing another man in my house all the time. You know what? Let me set some stuff up over here just in case this may pop off. I'm not sure. And then the second part, Lisa may be throwing herself in head into her career because she feels it's more rewarding than her relationship with James. And I can say from experience, I've done that where I didn't feel, wanted or my needs were met. But instead of going to another person, I pour myself into school, I pour myself into work because I was seeing, oh, I'm growing in these areas versus at home and not having the conversation. So that's just my interpretation of this, but I'm ready to hear Lisa and Coach.
So I have to stop at fear, because if both of them are having some type of fear about their I think everything derives from what is happening at home, and it extends out to your professional. And I think fear, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of understanding. But then God does not give us the spirit of fear. He gives us a spirit of love, peace. Don't I don't want to misquote it. The scripture I'm talking about. So help me out.
Love, power, and sound mind.
Yeah. So that's what he gives us. So if any fear is coming in, that means that there is some internal work that I need to do. I need to sit down and do some self-examination. I need to consider my ways, because why is it, again, it always go back to me, because if there are these thoughts of insecurities or fears, what are they? Why aren't we talking about them? Why aren't we addressing them? Why aren't we sitting down and saying, okay, these are my thoughts? Because so many times we don't want to have the difficult conversations. So what we do is we patch them up and we pacify it and we allow it to go on. We walk by each other and we don't have conversations and we don't talk like we're strangers because we don't want to have the difficult conversations. And so I think because of that, it drives us to make bad decisions because we haven't dealt with the first thing first. And so now we're sitting here and we're contemplating, we making assumptions. The devil is coming in and putting thoughts and planting thoughts in your mind. This is what's going on. Just if we don't allow the enemy to come in and deceive us, and we sit down and do the work, then these fears or insecurities don't have room to come in. Yeah, we're not going to always do it perfect all the time. But for the most part, if we come together and we say our commitment and our covenant relationship with God is first and foremost, and that is going to be reflective in the relationship that I have with you, then let's sit down, let's do the work. What does he say about this? Why aren't we having the conversation? Why aren't we going and sitting down and even go to counseling together to sit down if we don't know how to have conversations? So for me, I had to stop at the possibilities of the underlying fears and insecurities because that's a full stop for me. Because you have to stop there, because after that, all this other confusion is going to come. And what does the word say about confusion? Where there's confusion, that's what the enemy's working at.
All right. I like it. I like it. Um, I agree. Fear and insecurity is a good place to stop. Um, I think a lot of times, and I think Anita, you kind of mentioned this. James may have been making investments because he feared that Lisa doing her work may leave him. That is definitely that is definitely a perspective. As a man, I would tell you this: one of the biggest fears that men have is not being able to provide and protect their family. The protection thing kind of like goes second nature. As long as I'm here, as long as I got my, my armory, right? As long as I got my security, as long as I got the dogs, like I've set up protective measures for the house, but then I need to set up protective measures for the house. And so that's more long term, providing now and providing in the future. So part of that, my initial thoughts is that maybe part of what he was doing, he thought he was doing the right thing by storing up something for his children and his grandchildren in the time to come. And if that is the case, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that the individual and the perceived relationship that they may have, because again, it just says that the young lady is flirtatious. That doesn't make it James' fault. That makes it her behavior. And so it did not say that he partook in any version of her flirting, right? So I think a lot of times what we do is we perceive a thing and then run straight to the winds with it. Um, so initially, I would not assume that what he is doing is bad. I would think that it's probably what most men do. So we try to set things aside for our family, generation to generation. Um, so the fear there is based upon a worldly perspective that was put on you. Men provide and protect. That's it. So that could be one of the fears that moved him to it. Not saying that it was, not saying that that's the reason why he did it. I said it possibly could be. Insecurities is something totally different. Maybe he grew up in a single parent home, father left, and mama had to work sun up to sundown, so forth and so on. And now, because of that, he has moved here. So when I say because of that, that's the reason. That is a form of insecurity, right? Because ideally, the reason why I should do what I do is because of who I am and who I am in Him. That's it. That should be the reason. But when we make the reason about something someone else did or didn't do, now we're looking at what is perceived as secure relationships. And if I don't have that, I set the conditions to ensure that I never have to experience that, or the people that I love never have to experience that. So it's a right way to do it. It's a wrong way to do the right thing. Therefore, by the law of equation, a positive times a negative will always yield a negative. It's not so much as the outcome being negative; it's just that the behavior is the negative within that equation. Same thing with Lisa, right? Lisa may want to be an activist. There's nothing wrong with being an activist, especially if it's something that her and James discussed in the beginning, and he is 100% supportive of it. Here's what I would say: if James is supportive of her being an activist, why aren't they activating together? I'm being a wordplay. I apologize. Yeah, why aren't they being activists together? They should be joint activists. Therefore, brother man ain't got no room to quote unquote impart his own personal wisdom, and she quoting him. So that's the other side to it. Now, am I saying it's James' fault that she is doing that? Absolutely not. So if that's what you heard, you were wrong. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that is a way. But so again, if this was something that was discussed. Now, on the other side of it, if this was discussed and it's something that she's doing on her own, then you bringing back and quoting this man really can potentially say more about how you see your man compared to this man, because that's a lot what we do. We do a comparison, which is a trap in and within itself. So there's a number of different talking points that we can have under the umbrella of fear and insecurities. I kind of rambled long enough. Are there any other points you guys want to add? Because I mean, you guys are saying some wonderful things here. No, all right. Just wanted to make sure.
I did, of course, I have want to add something. I wanted to, I really seriously want us to understand how God views adultery. So I'm talking about this covenant agreement and relationship that we have entered into, and we made this agreement that we're going to do this, right? I want to read just this one verse because I have a whole bunch over here. I'm going to read this one. But Jeremiah 11 and 14. So God says, do not pray for this people or lift up a cry or pray for them, for I will not hear them in the time that they cry out to me because of their trouble. So in Jeremiah, as the Israelites were going into the land of Canaan, and he told them, he said, listen, I'm preparing you. You're going into this place. They be worshiping these idols and these gods, but we done had this conversation. So you know that I'm the only God that you're going to serve and worship. And they were struggling with that. And he had to have this conversation with them over and over and over again. But when I read that and he said, don't even pray for them. Because I've had this conversation with him already. And he said, I'm not going to hear it. Don't even pray for them. That's how important it is for us to worship God. Because if we don't and knowingly worship something else, our prayers are not going to go anywhere. I don't care who it is, for your children, for your family. I don't care who it is. He said, I'm not going to hear your prayers. I just had to add that to it.
No, I appreciate that. I listen. So I like the way you so elegantly put it. I say it differently. I tell people in the heartbeat, like, you praying for somebody to do something that they were commanded to do, that's a waste of prayer. If there's a commandment that says that it's your responsibility to do a thing, it's pointless for me to pray for you to do the thing. That's for you to do. It is. He would never supersede his word. It's that simple. So if he charged you with doing a thing, then that's your responsibility. That's the space, kind of going back to last night, right? That's the space um to where what's the word? Gratitude, right? That's the space where the storm is supposed to help make you do the necessary work on you, right? If you don't make the decision to do what he told you to do, then the storm will come so that the storm will force you to realize that, man, I'm tired. This storm was whooping me all week. I'm tired, boss. I'm gonna do it your way. I don't want to fight this no more. Then when you get to the point to where you realize that the grass is green on the other side, then gratitude kicks in and says, man, I sure appreciate that storm coming. And now the storm becomes your testimony of being stubborn. I greatly appreciate you saying that, Lisa. But I just say God ain't gonna make you do what He told you to do. That's just it. You don't make it. Same thing with your kids. You tell your kids to do something, they don't do it. Punishment ensues. Why do we view God as being differently? It is what it is, though. All right. I need to jump into chats, man, because some things being said over here that go back up to Michelle's, where she says both. I believe the commitment is inclusive. You can manage one without violating the other. So as she finds that, Michelle, when you said that, I want to say that was for the last question. When you said both, I believe she said both as far as adultery and idolatry. She said, I believe the commitment is inclusive. You can't manage one without violating the other. I really like that perspective because it kind of goes back to what I said previously, right? A lot of times when adultery happens, it really shows a version of idolatry as well. And so again, if my commitment, right, is to the Most High, the covenant that I made is to the Most High, then I need to understand, what I'm actually doing, where I'm going wrong within that. So thank you for saying that. Poor man said we only worship the Most High. That's a very accurate statement. Nothing, what's understood don't need to be explained. Cassandra said if they discussed the advancement of her career, did they consider what it fully entailed, or was it something that to placate a tense situation? That's another great point, right? Sometimes we have partial discussions thinking that conversation were had. I like that. She further goes on to say, therefore, there could be an underlying situation. Now, there's a distance between them, allowing them to be adulterous in thoughts and idolizing those that are paying attention to that affection. I like that as well. And that kind of leads into what, poor man, what he said next. So the main thing is the main thing. I mean, yeah, that's just it. Let me. So that's to Lisa's point about having a hard conversation. The job is never the commitment. The Most High always is always the job. Um, yeah. So for a person who's seen The Crown, just in case some of you have never seen The Crown, go back, and I talked about this last Saturday with them. Go back, and you can Google it. Google Prince Philip's emotional conversation with Diana, and it's like maybe at most a 4-minute clip. And as you listen to Philip talk to Diana, I want you to imagine that Philip is talking about God Himself, not the Queen of England. And when you listen to his depiction of why she is so lost within the span of that family, it sounds like it's interchangeable. It really sounds like that could be a verse that's injected in the Bible. So thank you for sharing that, Michelle, because I forgot I mentioned that last week. So yeah. Um, let me see. So Crystal brings out a good point, and I think she is asking this as a question. She said, "So we can commit adultery to the Most High." Looks like there's a unanimous yes up
Yeah,
top.
absolutely.
Yes.
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 In fact, if we're completely honest, that's where adultery is committed.
Mhm.
We're just offended by it. Adultery is committed with the Most High because that's where the covenant exists. That's it. That's it. That's the video. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Let's move on to the next because time is going. Uh, time is really flowing. What's the next question here? I kind of lost my spot. There we go. How does their actions reflect their needs and or perception of what their marriage should provide?
Okay. I didn't even realize I was still unmuted. I'm glad I didn't say nothing. How does their action reflect their needs and or perceptions of what their marriage should provide? What their marriage should provide. So, like you were saying earlier, Coach, that we have this perception in our mind of what we perceive that we want to receive out of our relationship, because we haven't sat down and haven't, had a conversation about how this union is going to benefit both of us. Because we cannot have this union together without the agreement, the covenant agreement that we have with God. So when we're thinking about um, what's going to benefit me in the marriage, I think that's the wrong thought to have. That's my first response to this question. How does their actions reflect their needs? I would say that they're both at this particular point being selfish, and their focus is on themselves, and is not their focus is not on the relationship and the covenant agreement that they made with each other.
Yes, ma'am. I'm over here. Absolutely. How do their actions reflect their individual needs? I'm gonna start there. They need to grow up, because if you're in a covenant and you're in marriage, why are you still acting as you're a child? This is two people coming together for the purpose of growing, and there's a mission. There is no place for immaturity or lack of responsibility. Everybody needs to be accountable. So they need to do the hard thing, which is communicate, be vulnerable, because in this society, we have, not we here, but collectively as people, looked at vulnerability as a weakness, and it's not. People who experience or express vulnerabilities, they actually are stronger than the ones who don't, because they're telling the truth. They're showing you who they really are. So that one is the need. I see Coach with his hand up. You got a question, Coach?
I'm feeling the spirit. Go ahead. I got a
Oh.
question, but keep going. I got a question, but keep going. Keep going.
So based on that, perception is not real. They're not even being their authentic self to begin with. So when you become your authentic self, you evaluate and reevaluate who you are in Christ. You can have these conversations, and then Christ at the center. He's the azimuth. He's the regulator. He's the cardio knower, better than a cardiologist. So he's the one who's going to say, You allow him to do that, so that way your perception of what marriage is, if it's not right, he's going to correct it. That's all I gotta say.
All right. So first and foremost, I like the way you started this off. Right. I like the fact that they need to grow up. Agreed. That's it. I'm just saying that's the answer. Across the board, there's so much immaturity in adults that they confuse with adulthood. No, you're just immature. Like that's for starters. But I'm sorry, let me back up. I started to, get into that because I like the fact that you said that. So needs, that word right there, needs. I wanna go there, because a lot of times what you hear people say is, "This is what I need from you," right? And so, how do you guys feel about that? I'm just gonna lay it out there without no further explanation. How do you guys feel about, "This is what I need from you"?
First, you're saying what I need from you, not what I need to examine within me. So if you're making it someone else's responsibility to do the work that you need to do inside of you, then that's wrong, and it's not even possible for them to do it. They don't have the ability to do it. So there's a scripture that says, "Cast all your cares to me, for I care for you." So God, you can give them to God, and then you can do the work, and you can. This other person can be, be someone who you're accountable to, but they cannot do it for you. You have to do the work.
The word says, I will supply all your needs according to my riches and glory. He ain't talk about me to supply your needs. He said him. So again, what you need to do is go to the Father, ask him to, okay, I'm just gonna say it like this. Anytime somebody say this is what I need from you, I automatically think that's insecurity on their side that they don't want to address, like Lisa was saying. That's not my responsibility. So again, the word says he will supply all your needs. Let's start with that first.
Here's why I asked that. Because I think it's important for us to always consider our ways. That's first and foremost. We should be in a constant space of growth and evolution, right? You should not be the same this year as you were last year. So that should be your plight every step of every day of your life. We have to be conscious of our behaviors. We have to be conscious of committing adultery against the Most High. We have to be conscious of idolizing something, someone, whatever the case may be, other than maintaining the posture of thou shalt have no other God before thee. But I also believe that you have to be consciously aware that you do not ever allow another person to idolize you. If you ever put yourself in that scenario, you're just as guilty as that person who is trying to idolize you. That's why I asked that question. This word here is a trigger. I'm not saying an emotional trigger. It's a sign. It's an indicator. It's a click automatically. The minute that a person tells you this is what I need from you, you need to throw both your hands up and take a step back and say, hold up, that's not my responsibility. It's not my job. I'm not going to put my hands on that plow. That's not the plow I was called to.
Okay, cool.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we talk about love language? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead and talk about love languages.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm asking you to. Okay, I always ask you this question because I really want us to get this. Okay, when somebody tells you that their love language is physical touch, I need you to, I need you to help with the proper response, Coach.
You need to go. You need to go exfoliate. I'm sorry.
Not exfoliate.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was petty. Okay, fine.
I ask this all the time, but because I really want us to get our life right, because this is not. And one of the things that you said, Coach, what I thought was a really good explanation and a way to view it. If that is your love language, then that's good for you to know, to be aware of. But then your responsibility should be to go figure out all the rest of them, and don't try to project or put that onto someone else because it's what you want. That's, to me, is still likened to this is what I need from you.
Absolutely. It is another form of manipulation. That's all it is. And what gets under my skin is I hear people, preachers, pastor, they quote this stuff. They talk about love languages, right? So you're giving the parishioners, you're giving them permission to manipulate their next quote unquote spouse. No, why not teach something different? Teach something better. If I know out of the 5 love language, I think it's 5. So physical touch, quality time, gifts, words of affirmation, and whatever it is, I don't care. If mine's, because I'm a dude, all man, right? If mine is physical touch, It's a reason why mine is physical touch. Do I really need to expound on that? It is manipulation at its finest. If yours is gifts, right? It's a reason why yours is gifts. Come on. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. But we have been hidden under the cloud of this foolishness. Acts of service. Thanks, Adrian. We have been hidden under the cloud of this foolishness, and we believe it's a thing that we can project on another person and claim is godly. It's foolishness. There's not one thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lisa. You know me.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to add to, what you were saying, that we can't be complicit in these behaviors. We can't allow someone to idolize us. And so that's the thing that I wanted to make sure that we are recognizing, especially the people in our community, because we want to do this, get this right, because we've had so much wrong information coming up in our lifetime. Not that our generation, our parents' generation, they gave us what they knew, but it's our responsibility to take now what we now know and renew our mind, transform, and then if we have to go back and talk to our children because we taught them something in error, do that too, even as adults, because we don't want we don't want them to continue.
Ain't nobody sliding down your chimney. Cut that mess out. Tell them kids the truth. I'm sorry. Listen, come on, man. Okay, I'm acting all right. I'm gonna be good. I promise. For the next 15 minutes, I'm gonna be good. I'm sorry, Anita. You got anything you want to add before we go for?
No, it's absolutely correct. I mean, we have a responsibility as well. And we can sit here and pretend that we don't know, but you know, when somebody has placed you up on a pedestal and you say, oh, well, it's all about me. And then they say, we looking at you on the ground and, well, nobody don't. Why did you give them the power? You should have not. You knew what you were doing. So just like I tell my daughters, they do sports and things like that. I had to catch it before it got too bad, where they they aren't telling me I'm doing a good job. I said, no, no, no. You don't perform for them. You perform for God. Your audience of one. As soon as you start performing for them, then you give them the power over you to destroy you. So just in that instance, and she's like, thank you, mommy. I'm renewing my mind.
I love it. There's a scripture. It's in the book of James, James chapter 3. Um, and the scripture says that there is a much harsher punishment for teachers. Every parent is a teacher. If you're teaching your child a lie and you know it's a lie, why does that even make sense? Just because you're in the Christmas spirit, you're in the spirit, all right. You ain't in no Christmas spirit, you're in the spirit. That's all that is. Anyway, moving along, because you got to see, stop it. It's your fault, Lisa. It's your fault. You started this. Impacts on relationship. Doggone it. In what ways? In what ways could their discovery create a shift in the power dynamics and emotional intimacy in their marriage?
I have a question. So, do you mean the discovery of what each have been doing outside, or the discovery that, hey, we have an issue?
So yes. So I think not just the discovery within itself of the issue, but the conversation that should ensue behind it. Because again, you got to realize some people aren't to the point where they're going to have that conversation and own what they've done. So I'm sorry, I may have gave too much.
Well, I mean, if you're not gonna take ownership, this creates more issues. You got anger, bitterness that may come up, resentment, and then the power dynamic of now we really are competing. That's my take on it. If I can't get anywhere with you and you can't get anywhere, are we really in a relationship or are we competitors? What are we doing? So the power dynamic, there isn't any power in that relationship. It's just displaying weakness all over it because we can't sit down as adults, take accountability and responsibility so that way when shift happens, we can move along with it and not be sifted as weak. We need to be able to come together. This is a marriage, it's a covenant. I'm just saying, I'm not about to be intimate with somebody I can't trust. Somebody that has shown me they're not trustworthy, that they out here not telling me about things that pertain to the household. I get that James may have done this to have a backup plan to provide. However, it's still a conversation. So I want to be able to still communicate with my spouse in the relationship, be vulnerable, and not think that this person is going to use that vulnerability as an atomic bomb later on. So the power dynamic to me, there isn't any if we can't come together. And then there isn't any emotional intimacy because I don't want to deal with you at that point. So why are we even still here?
Okay. So, I'm a word person too. So I'm looking at shift in the power dynamic. First of all, we have this perception that we have power, but we really don't have power. All power belongs to God. That's first of all. What ways could their discovery create a shift? The discovery about the first work that we have to do is on ourselves. Again, I have to just keep going back to that because we can't do the work that's in someone for someone. They have to do it themselves. And so that is the process of discovering. But the work has to be done in you. You have to do the work. There is no power dynamic outside of the relationship that you have within this three chords. The husband and wife, the father's in the middle, then the husband and the wife. That's the power, that's the dynamic. And we are supposed to always continually help each other understand we can filter everything through the word of God, pretty much. We have to filter everything. We don't have to always quote the word of God, but we have to be able to express it in a way that it makes sense in layman terms so that we won't feel like someone's trying to beat us on top of the head with the word, because some people say they feel that way. But we can have conversations where we are helping each other, we are discovering, but everything has to be filtered through the word of God. Because if we don't, we're going to be still teaching each other on in the worldly concepts, which is not going to help us to grow. And so I don't know if that makes sense. That's my response to this question.
It does make sense. However, I do have a follow-on question for the both of you.
Okay.
Bring up poor man's last statement, please.
He's trying to start confusion.
But that's a legitimate question, though. And I promise you, I'm not trying to be petty along with him, right? We're not partners in petty. But I want you two to address. Y'all know what I'm gonna say, but I want you two to address it because I think it means more coming from a woman than it does from a man. Just being honest.
When emotions go up, cognition goes down. So we can't even have a good conversation if we're emotional or we are in our feelings. So right there, we leave ourselves at a disadvantage because we can't focus on our feelings. I feel where in the word of God that says that her feelings mean or his feelings mean that you need to adjust your behavior or change or do something different outside of what I'm telling you to do.
But the pastor said that we have not a high priest who isn't touched by the feelings of our infirmities.
Okay. That simply means That simply means he has experienced everything as he lived here on this earth and walked in this earth. He has experienced every aspect of who we are. That's why we have to take our cares and cast them, give them back to God. This is why we have to, he says, cast your cares on me, for I care for you. Not that we don't care for each other, but he can handle them. He told, if we have needs or feelings or concerns, give them to God, because he said, I can handle them. He didn't say give them to your husband, your wife, your children. He didn't. That's not what I didn't see it anywhere. And if I'm wrong, you can help me because I don't. I've never read that anywhere.
That's that new Underground Railroad translation. Anita, Anita, what is your?
So I'm just gonna say feelings are fickle. They change, but the truth does not. And the truth is that God is in covenant with us as we should be in covenant with him. He said he would not break his covenant. He didn't say, well, if you feel like doing it today or tomorrow, let me know and we'll circle back. So feelings change, but truth does not. So we focus on the truth, not the feelings. Now you can, I do believe that there are things that people say that are harmful and they know that they're harmful and they're used as projectiles to harm someone. Do we do that as Christians? We shouldn't. So I get some people, my feelings were hurt. Okay. I'm gonna need you to, no, I'm not gonna need you to do anything. However, that is something that you need to deal with internally. And me as a crybaby, I cry if I watch Lion King. My feelings used to get hurt very, very easily. However, the Lord, spending more time with the Lord, I noticed that it wasn't real. It's an emotion. It shouldn't. My emotions shouldn't have me. I have emotions. So they change. I'm gonna be happy. I'm happy right now, but I might be upset a little bit later on. Does that mean that I tear up the whole house? No. The truth is, what is it that I dealt with or what I'm dealing with? So no. What about your feelings? They change often.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to quote
Now,
the emoji. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and I'm not saying we're not saying that feelings don't have a place in us because they do. You know, affection and feelings, they're all for our benefit for with each other. You know, so we're not saying that we're supposed to be robots and not have any emotions. We're saying don't try to use those to manipulate people and use them to you know, have your way, get what you want.
So here's why I played the petty game with my brother real quick. Bring the question back up again. The question, when it comes back up, I want to point out something significant. So, no, not that one, the other one, the one about the power dynamics. That's the one we're on. Yes, yes. Okay, when I got lost on place in translation. I think we were on the yes. Okay, there we go. Power dynamics. Thank you. So this, I'm sorry, my screen don't go that far out, right? So this one, power dynamics, right, and emotional intimacy, because of the again the preconceived notion, the conditioning that women are emotional creatures, men they're disconnected, they don't have emotions, blah 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 blah. When you inject your emotions into the conversation, I have already been rendered helpless because the concept is that you are better with emotions than I am. You are more emotionally connected than I am. Therefore, when you get emotional, when you start crying and all that other good stuff, I now become powerless. Why? Because I have no way of using of bringing the facts to the table to appease your emotions, right? And so it is a huge misconception. I'm gonna do just like the emoji on everybody's phone. What about your feelings? When you finish crying, let me know so we can finish our conversation. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You crying does not change the dynamics of the conversation that we got to have. I'm going to give you time to deal with what you got to deal with. I'm going to run around the corner and, get me a drink real quick. I'll be right back. Right? Go clear your face up so we can finish this conversation. Now, when you get too high strung, we're going to take a time out. Right? That's not necessarily the best thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. Why? Because when you get too high strung, one or the other, man or woman, right? Now, like Lisa said, when emotions go high, cognition go low. You ain't thinking clearly. Let's go and take a time out. We're gonna re-engage this 5 minutes. Gonna walk around the house, do some jumping jacks, some side squat or hops, some push-ups, whatever the case may be. And come on back, let's finish this conversation. But we're gonna finish this conversation. I don't care how emotional you get. That's the issue. Like Lisa said, we don't like having difficult conversation. In what ways could their discovery create the shift in power dynamics? Well, if Lisa found out that his, account manager is a flirtatious female, she might get all emotional and start crying. And I can't believe you did this to me. I ain't do nothing. Only thing she's an emotional. She's a flirtatious. That has nothing to do with me. You know what I'm saying? So you automatically perceive the end state without no relevant data that says this is what's going on. And so, because of your perception of the end, you automatically get in your feelings that renders him automatically guilty. And therefore, he spends the next 3 to 4 months buying you gifts because that's your love language, right? Buying you gifts to make up with you. What? There is no emotional intimacy. There's only emotional manipulation. So we got to get outside of the realm of that. Get outside of your emotions controlling everything. Your emotions only are supposed to be for you. It is a recognition tool for growth internally, right? That's for what it is. Once a situation presents itself and you feel a particular type of way, and the facts line up with what the word says, which means that that person has trespassed against you, again, my boundary, my yard, my work, right? Now, I have some work to do on me because this probably shouldn't affect me the way it is. However, because I can clearly see that the evidence says that you're wrong, I need to have a conversation with you because I need to understand why that this presents itself. That's it. That's the answer. But what we want to do is we want to throw our emotions in the ring and let the emotions be the one that drive to righteousness. No, it never has and never will work that way. And until we figure that part out, emotions will always lead decisions. Emotions will always lead conversations. Emotions will always lead relationships. And then when it all boils down, when it all comes down to it, you may have a variation of emotions. In fact, a variation of relationships. In fact, you may have some very good relationships, right? I'm going to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, go back and analyze those relationships, right? Do they spend a significant amount of time with you, right? They may seem like good relationships, but if I only talk to you like once a week or once a month or whatever the case may be, mm, I question the validity of that statement. Okay, man, this is yeah, that's kind of like what we got to get to right now. I'm sorry because the time has gone. This is the bittersweet moment of this conversation. So with that being said, as always, I tend to let the ladies go first. So we're going to start off with Miss Onita first. Give us your final thoughts, and then we're going to be followed up by Miss Lisa Keys, and then I will give my final words. And then that's it.
Well, I'm going to say thank you all for joining us on your Saturday morning. And what we've been talking about is very important, or else we wouldn't be having this discussion. But just know that adultery and idolatry, they can be intertwined. And we do not want to find ourselves in either way as it pertains to the Most High. So allow God to be at the center and regulator. So when you find yourself placing more admiration, more reverence, desire, lust towards other things other than Him, and he can be the one to remind you. So allow Him at the center. So when that happens, you're able to capture it and cast it because it does not belong in your relationships. And that's all I will leave you with. I hope y'all have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday.
Thank you guys so much. I really enjoy doing these, and I think the thing that I really enjoy doing is discovering in the process of preparation and preparing to have these conversations. One of the things that stuck out to me is we talked about covenant. We talked about, but we did not talk about making a vow to the Lord and an oath to the Lord. So when we do that, when we make an oath or we make a vow to the Lord, we should make sure that we adhere to that. You know, the word of God tells us to be cautious. You know, let our word be yea or nay. So anytime we enter into something that we are making a covenant agreement, we understand that there are going to be some expectations attached to that, and so we have to be mindful to adhere to the terms of that covenant and that agreement because they are there. You know, um, God has a requirement for us to do certain things, and He has a requirement for us to take care of what He has placed in our hands. And so I want us to be mindful of the gift giver, you know, the Creator, who has provided the gifts of our family and everything for us to take care of them, but to give them back to Him. So those would be my final thoughts.
Um, in conjunction with everything that you've already heard, I want to say that we need to go back and analyze our understanding of adultery and idolatry. A lot of times we look at the act, a particular act, and claim it to be adultery. Why? Because that's the information that was passed down to you. In fact, that's what Webster tells you it is as well. But we never go back and look at what led up to the act. And in most cases, when you go back and look at what led up to the act, it probably has been a separation that exists within the household before the physical act of sex ever took place. So adultery ends up begetting adultery. So we got to go back and analyze our perception of adultery. We got to go back and analyze our perception of idolatry. You know, we worshiping trees, we worshiping days on the calendar, we worshiping these little cherubs with wings that shoot arrows on your backside and say that that's what love is on Valentine's Day. We worship birthdays. We were like all of this is just wrong. I mean, and then what ends up happening, it becomes another form of manipulation because it's my birthday. Therefore, you need to buy me a gift. I don't need to buy you nothing. You would like for me to buy you a gift. And if I do so under my own good graces, you should appreciate the fact that I do so. That's the right answer. But what we'll do is we'll set the conditions to a understanding that the other person needs to have because that's my image of relationship. And here's what we need to understand most of all our perception, our perception of our relationship with Christ requires us to sacrifice ourselves for Him. And therefore, whatever you knew before accepting Him, you sacrifice. The more He shares in knowledge with you, the more you grow in knowledge and understanding Him, you sacrifice the stuff that doesn't serve it. So it's a continual sacrifice of you for the sake of Him. Because, and I want to go back and touch it, the three-strand cord is you, Christ, and the other person. So Christ is always in the center. Why? Because He is the one that actually stands in the gap and look the Most High in the face and grip hands with Him. And that's the covenant that is made on your behalf. He becomes a sacrificial lamb. And that's what the relationship is all about. So, in most cases, we need to go back so that we can understand what marriage is, what is the purpose of marriage, and all of those things. Because when we don't, we're literally just getting into a situation because we are lonely. I hate to say that, but that's the God, the honest truth. We get into situations because we are lonely and because you're looking for somebody to satisfy your fleshly needs of being lonely. It has no godliness in it. But yet we'll say that that's who God sent me. Anyway, we talked about covenant, in the diamond program. So again, go to the diamond program so we can understand what covenant agreement really is in detail and understand why that's significant. Listen, on behalf of my guests, Lisa Keys and Onita Simpson, also AKA Onita V, right? We greatly appreciate you. We value you. Everybody that's in the chat, of course, we value you and we appreciate the value that you add to the discussion. For those of you who are watching, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or wherever else, by all means, keep coming back. Tune in every month as we do these conversations. Tune in every Friday at 8 p.m. for the Hearts of Men podcast. And again, it is our goal anytime we do this to serve you well. And lastly, go jump over to totalmindsetshift.com and join the community, because we're continuously having conversations. And I promise you, you may see something along the lines about idolatry and adultery coming up here in the next couple of hours. So, that being said, you guys have a great rest of your day. Have a fantastic weekend. Listen, don't just expect the blessings of God to come to you, be a blessing to those that come before you as well.
Take me back to a place where I felt at home. Take me back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we blew it all. Take me back to a place where I felt at home. Take me back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we blew it all. Too many things going on, I can't keep track of them all. From people dropping a bomb to people putting up walls. I feel like life is on hold, perception stuck in a vault. I know that time can heal all, but how much time till we fall? It's awfully chilly outside when there's no shelter to hide. When everything is a lie, you'll find that out in some time. But when the things on your mind are all considered a crime, communication aside, we'll all just fight till we die. Is this an argument or just the start of it? Either